Welcome to the Talent Equation Podcast. If you are passionate about helping young people to unleash their potential and want to find ways to do that better, then you've come to the right place. The Talent Equation Podcast seeks to answer the important questions facing parents, coaches, and talent developers as they try to help young people become the best they can be. This is a series of unscripted, unpolished conversations between people at the razor's edge of the talent community who are prepared to share their knowledge, experiences, and challenges in an effort to help others get better faster. Listen, reflect, and don't forget to join the discussion at thetalentequation.co.uk. Enjoy the show.
Good morning. Been a while. Hope you're okay. Out here again with Flo, doing another dog walk diary. And I had to do one because, wow, what's been happening in the world of English football, and I mean, okay, so maybe I shouldn't have started it sounding like I'm so surprised, but I am. Well, I say that I am and I'm not. So why am I surprised? Well, I guess I'm surprised because I'm conditioned. I'm a generation that is, albeit too used to sporting failure. I still talk about the fact that I'm not used to us being so successful in the Olympics, even though it's been several games now where we've been performing brilliantly. I still remember the days like Atlanta where I think we got one bronze, I think. Maybe one or two more, but not many. I remember the days, where our cricket team I would go and watch the test matches at Old Trafford, and as a boy, and watch us get destroyed by the West Indies with a bowling attack made up of Curtly Ambrose and Patrick Patterson and Malcolm Marshall and Courtney Walsh, and we just seemed so inept and incapable, and recently watching a brilliant documentary on Sky called Spin Wash, which is about the '93 England tour to India. And when you look at it, you just look at how so many things were stacked against the side that was going out there touring, but just the sort of genuine amateurness of the way we organise sport and all those sorts of things, and how far forward we've come. And I say we, I think this is actually true of all sporting endeavours, by the way, across the globe. Seeing this just increased level. But again, I have to check that a little, by saying that, that's also come with, it's come at a price, I think. It's in some cases, because the quest for performance and excellence sometimes can lead to unhappy experiences for some, and in some cases way more than unhappy experiences, quite dangerous and traumatic, to use the genuine sense of the word traumatic, not to use the word trauma to mean destabilization or discombobulation or something like that. Genuinely traumatic experiences for some people. So, but having said all that, the pursuit of greatness, if you like, or the pursuit of a sporting achievement, and striving for something along those lines, has its own value. We obviously just need to make sure that it's done in a way that is appropriate. Anyway, I've gone down my own blind alley there slightly. It's just something that's particularly relevant to my world at the moment. But in reality, coming back to why I started this conversation, for pretty much most of my adult life, I was, I know some people won't believe it, but I am young enough, or say young enough, I'm not old enough to have been born the last time an English football team made it to a final of a major championship. But we saw some glimmers, of some potential over the years, but never really seen this sort of work. And you see where the team has come from and how it's progressed, and you've seen this sort of steady increase. So this is not this cannot be, kind of pushed away as a fluke. We just happened to get good in this situation. You have seen a sustained program of improvement with this group. And yes, okay, I'm going to wax lyrical about England, so for all of my listeners further afield, I apologise a little, but there are some lessons here that I promise I will get to that I think you will find of value. So what you've seen here is a steady approach over a period of time, culminating potentially in reaching the final of the major championships, and all being well, we hope that might translate into being the victor in the European Championships. So what I wanted to do today was to talk a little bit about sort of the insights I have as to why this might have happened, and to also maybe pull out some of the insights as to how any of this might be relevant or valuable, for any of us out there looking to support a group of individuals, and supporting them on their journey of achieving their level of excellence or their level of greatness, however we define that, and however they define it, more importantly. When I say we, I mean we being not we the coaches define it, but we define it together with the athletes. So, I would say this, wouldn't I? Because I talk a lot about the role of coaches. I'm obviously passionate about coaching, and so I will say that I do think an enormous amount of credit needs to go to the coach and the coaching team and the coaching staff. And when I say coaching staff, I'm including. I think often when people when people hear me say the word coach, they're tending to think about the people who are sort of on the grass, so to speak, doing the kind of stuff with the ball. But when I talk about the coaching team and coaching staff, I'm going to include everybody who's involved in supporting the development of the group. And that's going to be sports science staff. That's going to be, sort of people who are working on the managerial and administrative side. People who are going to look at the sort of nutritional side. The whole package that it requires now for a group of athletes to be, to optimally perform across a period of time. So I'm going to include them all. Led by, Gareth Southgate as their head coach. So when you look at, a lot is being said of Gareth's leadership style, being one of humility, and how he has fostered and nurtured, the group to sort of, kind of follow in that image, if you like, and, how they seem to have not just connected together, even though they compete against each other on a weekly basis, and most of them are kind of wealthy enough to live a life of absolute comfort. And on lots of levels, you kind of ask yourself, why would you want to put yourself through the physical pain, challenge, etc., emotional stuff, sacrifice, and everything else to try and achieve something like this? But he's managed to get together a group that are fully committed to achieving that goal, and fully committed to achieving that goal in a selfless way. To the point where they recognise and understand that the effort here is a collective one. And you hear the players talking very often about those who haven't played. And you heard something similar with the GB hockey Olympic team, who often talked about, I think it was the 32, which is the sort of broader squad, and how they were so important to kind of guiding them towards winning Olympic gold. And I know that Gareth was part of a UK sport elite coach apprenticeship programme, where he would have been part of a cohort that would have included Danny Kerry, or if it didn't, it was very much part of, Danny would have been, a part of that high performance community. So there would have been significant opportunities. And I do know that Gareth has spent time with Danny, the head coach of the women's side. But actually, the important thing is that Gareth hasn't just spent time with people like Danny. He spent time with everybody. Why does he do that? Because one of the things about Gareth, and I do know this from first-hand experience, is that he has an intense curiosity and a huge thirst for learning. So how do I know this? Well, I was very fortunate in one of my previous roles, where I was working for England Rugby, and I was working in the talent pathway, and on an annual basis we would gather together with sorry, the building site nearby, so that's not an idea. On an annual basis we would gather together with our colleagues from cricket and from football. And, so you'd have everybody working in the talent system, me working with the sort of younger age right through to our performance directors, etc. And we would gather together for a couple of days, once a year, and solve problems together, share our respective challenges and solve problems. And on one of these trips, which I was very fortunate to attend, I ended up in breakout groups, with various people. And in one of those breakout groups, I ended up with Gareth. And I remember, thinking to myself, at the time I think Gareth was in charge of the under-21s. Another insight, by the way. And one of the things I remember, and it's really left an impression on me, I've remembered it ever since, is that he obviously didn't, he didn't know anything about me, didn't really know anything about my kind of any of my experiences or anything like that. Genuinely, I'm a nobody. But I remember how kind of intently he listened to anything I was offering, and also the depth and the probing of some of his questions. And I remember sort of distinctly thinking to myself, like, why would you want to hear about anything from me? I'm kind of wanting to hear what he's got to say, and he's trying to pull information out of me about the way we've sort of developed our talent system in rugby and our approach to coach development and a range of different factors. And And I thought to myself, well, so it stuck with me. And what I've since come to learn is that that's actually a hallmark of him as a coach and a leader, but also him just generally as an individual who, it's the way he kind of navigates through life. He sees every opportunity to learn something. He sees every opportunity, and he doesn't try and kind of qualify them or dismiss them and say, oh, that's not going to be valuable for me. Every interaction to him has real value. Every interaction he is going to derive something from. He's going to be able to learn something from. He's going to bring some value, some way to him. And other people I've spoken to who've had the pleasure of his company have said the same thing. He asks a lot of questions to the point where he's almost not the one doing the talking. He's the one doing the listening, so to speak. Which, you do sometimes find a little bit odd. So it certainly feels a little bit odd. So I remember, so I distinctly remember that. The other thing that is worth mentioning, and I mentioned it earlier, is he went through an apprenticeship as a manager. And a difficult one, because like a lot of ex-internationals, he, became a coach or a manager relatively quickly at a relatively young age with relatively little experience. And, he managed a side, Middlesbrough, and did okay, but, he would probably be the first to admit, probably didn't achieve what he would have liked, what he would have hoped. So, but instead of like going on to the next job and the next job and the next job and then just kind of meandering your way around the leagues and the clubs, he kind of almost like went back to school, and that's when he took his role within the FA, which kind of not everybody would have necessarily done, but clearly very passionate about his country and the progress of his country, and was working not just as the coach of the under-21s, but also heavily involved in a kind of developmental role, like I don't know how to describe it, but he was like almost like a pathway manager, pathway director, something along those lines, I suppose. So he had the sort of the dual role. So that's one of the reasons he was so interested in the sort of developmental stuff. So he, and as part of that, he sort of essentially went back and became and worked alongside lots and lots of the other coaches who were at the FA, lots of other coaches, worked and then, went and did the Elite Coach Apprenticeship Programme, learnt from a load of other coaches in different sports, spent time with Stuart Lancaster when I was at England Rugby, spent time, and Stuart's journey and Gareth's journey are very similar in lots of ways, because both of them came from within the organisation, from within the system as part of that sort of developmental journey, and then progressed into the national roles. And what you often find is, and the other reason I think there's a real parallel with Stuart Lancaster is because both of them are really passionate about, the stuff that I think often gets a little bit devalued, which is, the value of connection and the value of, I remember listening to Stuart Lancaster's first talk to the entire organisation, and I remember just coming away feeling so enormously inspired, because this wasn't a man who wasn't just bothered about his group and his team and his success or their success. He cared about the whole nation, and he cared about the impact that the team has on the whole nation. He really, really passionately cared that they, held themselves, accordingly, and really, recognize their ambassadorial role and recognize the need for them all to, make connections with the nation and to connect the team, as part of the nation, and connect the supporters with the success of the team, to make it part of a collective approach. And on lots of levels, that, is just a kind of smart move, really, isn't it? Because it then, means that you're not placing yourself as somehow adversarial. So, player engagement with the media and being much more open and much more accessible and much more honest, and seeing that sort of different side that you don't see normally with professionals who usually just give bland, sanitized answers. So understanding that the every single presentation or every single time there is a opportunity to connect with the wider world, we do that in a way that is authentic and real, but also but also respectful, and recognizing that there's a lot of things that maybe can't necessarily be said, but still being truthful and open, and this word humble again. And Gareth definitely, taken it. I'm not saying he's learned that from Stuart necessarily, but there's clearly some parallels here. And Stuart's not the only coach to have done that. I imagine Stuart sort of got that from others as well. There's several. But so the fact that he's spent time with coaches in different contexts. He's spent time with, he's not just looked within the sport. He's looked outside of the sport. He's looked for every opportunity to learn from kind of whoever it is has something that may have some value. He has sought to connect with a group and connect into a kind of the human desire to be more than just the results, more than just the outcomes. I genuinely believe, and I know this will sound really trite, and it will sound really kind of a little bit cliche, perhaps. And it's the sort of thing that people talk about performance sport, but there's a sort of romance to the approach. There's a sort of romance to the way that they're working. Excuse Flo's squeaky ball. There's a romance to it because he would be successful and highly regarded and a winner almost kind of despite, or even with results not necessarily coming, because of the approach, because of the way he sought to create that sort of deeper and wider connection. And but it's also a powerful motivation force. So when you as a coach get a group together and kind of ask the question, the deep and difficult question about what is it we're trying to do, but more importantly, who are we trying to be? Who do we need to be? Who do we want to be? And when you ask that really, really deep question, and that takes you sort of, you have to be pretty introspective, and you have to be prepared to sort of, look into your soul a little bit and ask yourself some fundamental questions about who you are as a human being and what you value and what you prize. And when you do that, not everybody's ready, not everybody wants to, not everybody's comfortable. But you do have to ask yourself some of those questions. And then once you've asked yourself some of those questions, you can actually put yourself in you can actually connect with others on a deeper level, because once you find that you have these bonds, and the bonds are forged through a shared collective identity and a shared drive towards, finding something in you that is, you're not necessarily, you didn't even know was there, for you to, kind of develop, a part of yourself that you may not be comfortable looking at, to improve your, kind of way of being in the world. Then all of a sudden, you start to get a group of individuals to become more than themselves, if you like, and more than the sum of their parts, So, and so performances come. So to me, it's almost like the ultimate win-win proposition, because when we, kind of touch deep into somebody's humanity, or a group's humanity, and when we really, really ask some of those difficult and searching questions, about what it's going to take. And do we genuinely, kind of want to embark on the journey? Are we prepared for the ups and downs and everything else? Are we prepared to sacrifice and to take and to kind of place ourselves in that kind of area of difficulty? Once we do all that, what you find then is that these people, this is a transformative experience for people, and that transformation, kind of happens for them as individuals, for the collective, and it then leads, to kind of different performances, on the field and in life. And this is the power of coaching in my book. This is exactly why I do what I do, because I believe that the things that we do, the small contributions that we make to people's lives, in my case, young people's lives, helps to, in some way, guide, their journey through life. Not the sport, but their journey through life. I deal with young people with some, in some cases, quite challenging emotional issues, and I am helping them somehow with a small word here, or a conversation there, or a little framing here that that might help them with the various challenges that they're facing. And the connection that you can create means that you're able to have some of those conversations more than you can have conversations with, in general everyday life. So anyway, I'll just bring it back to this point of, so this idea of, him being a winner, or the team winning as a result of the commitment that they've made. Now, okay, I know that wouldn't wash in the eyes of the media, and it wouldn't wash in the eyes of, kind of generally in the eyes of sort of quite a lot of people in society, because, ultimately you'd say, well, if you don't get the W, well, that's all bunkum. And that's certainly was the case for Stuart Lancaster, which I was very, very disappointed by at the time, because I felt that his vision was a vision for the nation and a vision for the organisation, not just a vision for him or a vision for the team. And it was one that was going to resonate beyond even his tenure. But the moment there was, the performances didn't match up. Even though we'd seen significant improvement, but the performances in the singular tournament of the World Cup, and a loss which was based on, fundamentally came down to the bounce of the ball almost, meant that he had to lose his job, even though every other successful England coach has always had a significant failure, which they obviously learnt from and was able to build from. And often when you look through the biographies of coaches, you see that they've had some sort of setback or failure which has been really valuable to their growth and learning. And in this case, Stuart Lancaster, who was still an inexperienced head coach, had that moment of learning, and that was going to be valuable. But the organisation chose to go in a different direction, and and there's been some successes subsequently. So you could argue they made the right call, but my view was, I think we would have had a more sustainable approach had we stayed with the individual who really sought to, kind of build this sort of platform of success that he did from within the organisation, not out with. And this is exactly what I believe, Gareth has sought to do. He has genuinely seen, that what it would take to make this happen, and he's built it within the organisation and made it a part of the fabric of the organisation. It was a project that started way, way earlier than his, kind of tenure, if you like, or his, started way earlier than his time in the hot seat, in the role. He was building the foundations of this, creating the connections in the talent pathway and the relationships, and building the systems and building the teams, and the staff and the support resources, and kind of identifying the players and creating the connections. It's a project that started a long time ago, not something that could easily be just sort of, a magic click of the fingers and all of a sudden we're a high-performing team. This is not a flash in the pan. This is a project that started, as I said earlier, several years ago, led by an individual passionate about the the success of the nation, but also passionate about a legacy, passionate about being part of a group, and part of something bigger than himself, and just playing a part in that. So we can't say that this is all down to him, because there's been lots of decision makers who have kind of guided that, appointed him to various different roles and given him opportunities, given him an opportunity to be the England manager, which at the time was, not, I wouldn't say universally applauded. In fact, there's probably several eggs on face journalists out there who would have castigated the decision, seen it as a, kind of a lack of ambition of the organisation. But having said that, we'd had so many, kind of less than appropriate performances in previous tournaments that it was a good opportunity, I suppose, to kind of rebuild, if you like. So there's and it's similar. It's interesting how Stuart Lancaster got a job at the same time, when the kind of the team and the organisation seemed to be, in a real state of flux. Almost like rock bottom, so to speak. Not quite, but sort of in that situation. So to a certain extent, when you're rebuilding, kind of anything's better than one's gone before. But that's a great opportunity to then, look at things differently and not just try and replicate, kind of other things that have been done before, and to look at this as being a transformative journey. So anyway, that was a bit of a rambling conversation, but I just want to do a quick recap over some of these things, just the kind of key takeaways. So first things first, somebody who understands leadership, and understands leadership in a very different way than is traditionally told. This is not about command and conquer. This is not about what I say goes. This is not about kind of discipline, coercion, kind of hire 'em and fire 'em style approach. This is about, I would describe it as servant leadership. Perhaps, in service of the group, in service of the players, in service of the other coaches, in service of the nation. And so, something akin to that. There's lots of different leadership styles, but as I see it, as I observe it, that's how it feels to me. So, understanding leadership in a different way, understanding that, and also, being prepared to see this as a long-term goal, being prepared and being humble enough to essentially, going to go back to school, if you like, and rebuild your own career and rethink everything you think you know. Understanding that previous experiences as a player do not act as a proxy for these kinds of qualities. But again, these qualities, probably were part of personality and part of the fabric and part of his DNA. But, they are, but just understanding that these qualities are not things that are, that can be developed as well and strengthened. So we have leadership, we have the willingness and the humility to rebuild. There's also the responding to setback, using that as an opportunity for personal growth. There's that intense curiosity, the hunger, the passion for learning and personal improvement as a means by which to create anything, and seeing that learning opportunity coming from everywhere and from anyone. And the learning not just coming through the formal structures, but through the informal as well, and through the conversations and the dialogue and the, and very much taking that developmental thing very very seriously. the fact that he's prepared to give his time to go over and above anybody, busy, you can do it. No, it's time, I've got to go and I'm going to talk. One of his coaches, I think it's Chris Powell, heard him talking about how he gives time to everybody. He says he doesn't know how he does it. Well, he sees that as that's the job. That's why. And he's 100% committed to the job and to be as good as he possibly can be. And part of that is giving time for people. And then this whole sense of, the question we ask ourselves, which is, who do we need to be? And how asking ourselves that question and, kind of almost like peering into and being introspective and peering into ourselves and our soul almost, and how doing that with ourselves, but also doing that with a group, and how that has, the potential to lead to, us finding out things about ourselves that can then lead us onto, onto greatness, or onto, onto, that's not greatness, but, greatness, however we define it. You might want to call it self-actualization. You might want to call it, it's about, us becoming the best of ourselves, or, the best of who we can be. And those are the things that I think are sort of important ingredients that aren't often talked about. When you have the sort of regular discussions about kind of success and the coaching, you can easily look at some of the factors and talk. And it's fascinating to me when you hear the media talking about, oh yes, and humility. Like humility is like a new thing, and it's like, oh yes, this is the secret sauce. Now, it's all about you. You've got to be humble, and if you're humble, then you're going to get success. Not as simple as that. So much more to it. Genuinely being humble requires us asking those deeper questions. So anyway, just some thought fragments, a few little things that were tumbling around my brain as I was arriving to get my second vaccination jab yesterday, and also, just reflecting on the game the night before ahead of the weekend's activities. And I just thought I would share some of those insights because, I was very fortunate to meet Gareth a couple of times, and I just thought it was important that, people got a sense of, what's happening under the hood, so to speak, and some of the things that are maybe less obvious. And hopefully there's a few things there you might want to take away and embed within your own practice, if possible. So anyway, I hope that there's some nuggets in there. I might have to listen back myself to work out what I was actually saying. But I hope you have a good week, and I hope you're safe wherever you are. I genuinely wish all the best to the England team, and we'll be watching intently on the weekend. And so, it'll be a really tense affair, I'm pretty sure. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing what's possible. And so in the meantime, have a great week and have some good coaching. If you're out there and you're getting a chance to do some work, send me over any comments, ideas, reflections, and as always, if you get a chance to, so you can support the show. A number of ways of doing that. You can go fully financial with Patreon and make a contribution. You can join the conclave if you want and become part of the learning community that comes together to solve our collective problems and have some of those deeper conversations. But actually, if that's not your particular brand of coffee, so to speak, then you can just subscribing is obviously great. Recommending it to your friends so that the show grows. Its audience base is really, really valuable. And also a review. If you like it, let me know. If you want me to do less stuff, let me know. less rambling, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Equation podcast. If you like the show, then please consider supporting it by leaving a review on your favorite podcast player, telling your friends about it, or even becoming a hero and show your appreciation by becoming a patron. Just head over to thetalentequation.co.uk and click on the Becoming a Patron button at the top of the page.